Hey, happy Thanksgiving. I'm Hugh Keeton along with Blake Brannon here in Mississippi. We don't just have turkey, we have eggs on Thanksgiving. The Egg Bowl trophy at stake on Thursday night, Thanksgiving night, between Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Blake, you're going to be making the trip to Starkville for the game. And so far, Ole Miss is the favored team by about 10 points, and rightfully so, probably, as the Rebels are on track with a win to win 10 games, second time in the last 3 years. And the Rebels have been on track. The Georgia game set them back, though. How important is it, you feel like, for Ole Miss to close this solid regular season with that 10th win?
Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't only close out the regular season in a good way for Ole Miss if they were to win, but it's also a rivalry game. You always, it's bragging rights for a whole nother year. It brings the Egg back to Oxford. So yeah, it's also a testament to just how the Rebels have been and how Lane Kiffin has helped build this program into the successful one that it is over the last couple of years. But yeah, it's a huge testament. Both of these teams know it. This game is circled for a long time. Once the season starts, both of these teams know how important this game is, and I think Ole Miss if they were able to win, just try and take that next step, into maybe possibly an 11-win season.
Yeah, that's right, and still the possibility of a New Year's Six bowl game if Ole Miss can win. The Rebels ranked 12th this week in the college football playoff rankings. Ole Miss would still need some help, but the bottom line is you have to win the game if you're still thinking about a New Year's Six game. And we're saying New Year's Six, we're talking about Peach Bowl, Cotton Bowl, possibly Fiesta Bowl also on the table. So that as far as a standard, and this time next year it would be potentially playoff. So they would be right on the fringe, make the game even bigger next year. But nevertheless, it is a statement win if you could pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, this game is so important, not just for the coaches, not just for the players, and not just for the fans, but this is the Mississippi rivalry. This is Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So this is a huge deal for everyone involved. Here's some footage from last year over at the Egg Bowl up in Oxford. But yeah, just a huge game and a huge statement going into the offseason. And this could end Mississippi State's season, looking for a way to get to a bowl game with a win here. So big deal for both programs. A rival could should stop Mississippi State's season tomorrow or during the game. But, it's just a huge deal for both of these teams.
Yeah, so Mississippi State, it's kind of been a season of turmoil. Bulldogs enter with 5 wins, let the coach go a couple of weeks ago, Zach Arnett. How do you motivate a team, you feel like? You talked about the bowl. Mississippi State does have a long bowl streak to keep going here, but it's been a difficult season just to get through, the uncertainty with who the coach is going to be now. Mississippi State will have the home field advantage. So what do you feel like the Bulldogs, how are they going to get up for this game and match the intensity?
Yeah, I think, regardless of everything off the field with the coaching turmoil and everything, and just really how the season has gone, it of course hasn't gone the way that they want it to, but you had that game against Southern Miss. Started off a little shaky, but Will Rogers also coming back, shaking off a little bit of the rust. But I think they figured out that we can still play. We've got our quarterback back. He shook off a little rust, but if he's able to stay healthy, we can still hang around. We can still get out there. We can still play the ball that we know how to play. Truthfully, I don't think they need any extra motivation. If they were to get up for a game, it's going to be this one.
It would be this one. Will Rogers, you see right there, he's had a great career at Mississippi State. You know how badly he wants to win this game. He's from Mississippi. He knows about the rivalry, and he's been a solid quarterback through it's unfortunate that he's not able to finish his career under Mike Leach, who he learned from, and he ran that air raid system so well. What is the importance of, you feel like, Will Rogers finishing? I guess he does have 1 year of eligibility left, but this could be his last game at Mississippi State. How important is it for him, do you think, to finish his career on a good note and play well in this game?
Yeah, and like you said, he's a Brannon native. He's kind of right there in the heart of this. Right close to Starkville, right close to Oxford, really. So he's grown up, watching this rivalry and now getting the chance to play on one side of it. And he's had a chance to play in a few Egg Bowls. But I think it's just so important for him to not only battle back from injury. Came back last week, and like I said, after shook the rust off a little bit, really started to look like his old self. And he's done nothing but grow and get better each year with and without Mike Leach at the helm of that offense. But I think for him, this game probably means everything.
Yeah, and so Mississippi State, we talked about the bowl winning streak. Let's figure in there was a couple of losing seasons in that bowl winning and that bowl streak to keep going. But as far as building momentum, it's hard to point at a bowl game in this situation with the new coach coming in and say that's really going to carry any momentum over. And with bowl games, you always see teams, a lot of the players want to opt out when they get to the bowl. So what a bowl game, is that any really significance there? I'm not sure that it is in this situation.
Right.
There has been times when, for both teams, they've gone in this game with a chance to get bowl eligible and it would able to build a lot of momentum. This year's a little different.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if they're able to win the game and extend their season just for pride standpoint, just to say, hey, we had this was a must-win game for us. We were able to do it. We're going to go to the postseason. But like I said, I think it's kind of a win-win either way, really, for Mississippi State, because if you win, you make it to the postseason, you go to a bowl game, you have a chance to keep some streaks alive. But if you don't, it's also, you've got some stuff to figure out in the offseason. You're still in the middle of a coaching search. You want to get all your recruiting on track. You want to get that whatever coach you're going to get, you want to get him there and get him ready to go because of recruiting, because of player retention. You want all this stuff that you have to do in-house, and you don't really want to be worried about practices. If you've got to travel a long way, like let's say they go to like the Sun Bowl in El Paso, you got to, it complicates a bunch of things when you really, really need stability in this program right now. So, I mean, I think it can be a win-win either way, but if they don't make it to a bowl, it's probably not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, and there is possibility that at 5 wins, Mississippi State could go to a bowl game if there wasn't enough bowl eligible teams out there. Greg Knox is the interim coach for this game, and he doesn't appear to have any chance to have the permanent head coaching position. So a lot of times you might go into a game where they might rally around a coach if he has a chance, but there's been no talk of him getting the permanent job.
Right, yeah, and it's a situation that Greg Knox has been in twice before, once already with Mississippi State when Dan Mullen left.
That's right.
Also led them to a bowl game and a win. That was over Lamar Jackson's Louisville team, actually. So it is a situation that he has been in before. He was also the interim head coach when Dan Mullen was fired from Florida, so he just kind of follows in Dan
third
Mullen.
time.
Yeah,
okay.
Third time. Yeah, so third time, twice at State. So he's all the players have really seemed to rally around him as it is, just to finish out the season. And he's said in some press conferences over the last couple of weeks, or since he's inherited that title, that they just have, before the Southern Miss game, they said we have two games left to play against 2 teams in this state, and we want to go 2-0.
Okay, so they beat the first team, Southern Miss. Greg Knox actually coached at Ole Miss many years ago under Tommy Tuberville.
Yes.
Senator Tommy Tuberville at Ole Miss, and he coached for a while with Tuberville at Auburn also. Okay, we've talked a good bit about Mississippi State. Now let's talk about the favored team, the team that has a lot riding on this game. After the win last week against UL Monroe, Coach Lane Kiffin, he said, we didn't spend much time working on UL Monroe. We actually got ahead and started looking ahead at Mississippi State a week in advance. He also said that they learned a lot of lessons last year on the short week after losing to Arkansas on a late night. They got back late, but this year he feels like he has gotten a full day of game planning in advance as compared to last year when they lost the game. Yeah,
and you're right. It is a short week, and that's tough for anybody, getting ready to play on a Thursday night, so right after playing on a Saturday. So it is a short week. It's good that you get a little bit of preparation in ahead of time. You still got to win had to win against UL Monroe. Looked a little rocky there for, a couple of minutes, but, Ole Miss also dealing with some injuries in key places. So, get everybody healthy, get your game plan set, and, you've got to take a road trip. You're not at home this year, so you got to take a road trip. That kind of adds into some of the planning and preparation as well. You've got to add in for that extra travel time. But, just a big deal. Short weeks are never fun for anybody, but just still got to go out there and do it.
Fun note, Ole Miss is actually staying on campus. They're treating it as a home game. Short trip to Starkville. They're staying at the same hotel where they always stay for home games and just making the short trip on Thursday. So road game, but they're trying to keep the same routine.
Yeah.
I will say this from an Ole Miss perspective. Last year there was a lot of distractions with Lane Kiffin talking about going to Auburn during that game week. This year, Coach Kiffin and other interviews I've heard with Jackson Dart, some of the other players, Ole Miss seems to be locked in for this game and seem to be motivated to get the trophy back.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you never want to lose a rivalry game 2 years in a row. You always want it. If best case scenario, you know, you win them all, you know, but realistically, you hope it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth every year. But yeah, a lot of distractions from last year that Ole Miss not really having to deal with this year. Mississippi State probably having to deal with more with the
Right
coaching
now,
change,
yes.
yeah, with the coaching change and everything in that realm. But yeah, you know, Ole Miss has remained locked in for a lot of the games this season. You know, like you said, with the Georgia game, a bit of a step back, but you know, came back, overcame some early, you know, a sleepy game against Louisiana Monroe, and now you get ready for your biggest game of the year.
Yeah, we're seeing video here of the last time Ole Miss played at Starkville 2 years ago. Matt Corral's last game, and Ole Miss won that game pretty easily. Lane Kiffin has talked about being kind of caught off guard by the cowbells in that game. He had gone and played at Mississippi State when he was at Alabama. He said the cowbells, the noise, and the intensity is just different for this rivalry game.
Yeah, and you know, it's going to be loud. The cowbells are going to be clanging. You know, so he's already had that. You know, been a 2 years back, but you know, he still has that experience. He's still been there in that environment. Now, some of the newer players on Ole Miss, you know, it might be their first time experiencing it, so it takes a little bit.
Yeah,
to
that's
get
the tricky
used
part
to,
about
so.
this. There's so many transfer players on both teams.
Yeah.
That aren't from Mississippi, don't have any background, and some of the players I've heard even said they didn't really think anything different about this game until they got in it, and it was something different once the game got going.
Right, yeah, and you know, you get some first-year transfer players that, you know, not only are they experiencing the rivalry in and of itself for the first time, but now on Ole Miss's side, you're experiencing it in a very hostile environment, in a very loud hostile environment. So that's what I'm going to kind of look out for, is just to see how Ole Miss deals with, you know, just being away, you know, being with the cowbells as loud as they are early on.
They've been playing the cowbells nonstop this week at practice. Oh, by the way, so they're feeling like they're going to get ready for the game on Thursday night. So let's talk about the keys of the game, and we'll go ahead and give our predictions for the game.
Okay.
All right. I'll say this about Ole Miss: the offensive line. They have a couple of starters out for this game. We saw that there was a little trouble with the offensive line against UL Monroe last week. The Ole Miss really needs to get the offensive line settled early in the game so they can get the running game with Quinshon Judkins going, and then Jackson Dart has the ability to throw some long passes. Mississippi State they're shaky in the secondary. The defensive backs haven't played that great this season. I think there will be opportunities as long as Jackson Dart gets some protection. I think Jackson Dart can hit some long balls with the receivers breaking free. I think Ole Miss will have open receivers in the game. And defensively, Ole Miss, you take away the Georgia game and LSU game, the Ole Miss defense has played pretty well.
They have.
Unfortunately for Mississippi State, that offense is not to the level of Georgia or LSU.
Right.
I think Ole Miss defense is going to play pretty well and make it tough on Will Rogers.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest question mark for me is Will Rogers. You know, he hasn't played an awful lot. He missed a good chunk of change, you know, kind of right there in the middle stretch of the season. So, but you know, coming back, getting a full week of prep once again, you know, just getting used to everything again. I think he's going to be the key for Mississippi State. If they want to get anything done, Will Rogers has got to be the Will Rogers that we've seen in years past. But like you said, the secondary for Mississippi State is questionable at times. We saw them get a little bit exposed against Southern Miss in the first half. You know, just bad tackling, poor tackling. But on the Mississippi State side, on their defensive front and their linebackers are that's been their solid point of their defense. Jet Johnson back there is just a ball hawk for a linebacker. So that's going to be another key matchup, is that Ole Miss offensive line against that Mississippi State defensive front. But I still think that Ole Miss offense is just too potent.
Yeah, and once they get into tempo, and I think they'll have chances to really zip down the field. So prediction, what do you think the score is going to be?
We'll say 27-17.
27-17, Ole Miss wins,
yep,
right at the point spread
yep.
of 10 points. I think I'm going to go Ole Miss 38-17.
Okay.
Pretty comfortable victory there. And if you're watching the over-under, if you know what that means, it's right on the number, 55.
Okay, 55.
So 38-17 is my score. And actually, there is talk that this game will move off of Thanksgiving. This could be the last year that this game is played on Thanksgiving night as SEC goes into a new TV contract and adding new teams. Next year, the game's been played on Thanksgiving many times through the years. It started in the late 90s and has become a tradition. Like it or don't like it, people, a lot of people have opinions whether they like it or don't. It is kind of difficult with families to get together and then have to switch gears and focus on the game. But it is fun for the nationally. People have tuned into this game and checked it out, and there's been a fight many times that have broken out during the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, and like it is, you know, we always see a bunch of NFL games on Thanksgiving Day, so you know, it's always good to see a college game as well. You know, kind of give some of the college players, you know, a taste of, you know, kind of an NFL-esque atmosphere on the TV. But yeah, I like it on Thanksgiving. It is kind of a good way to, you know, wrap up the day, wrap up the evening. If you're kind of tired of watching some of the NFL games, you can watch, you know, some of the future NFL players.
Right, and you are going to the game tomorrow. You were at the game last year. What was your thoughts of how the game was played? You're from Florida and been a Florida State-Florida game, I guess. Can you compare the two rivalries from what you've seen?
Yeah, you know, I mean, rivalry games are just so fun. You know, in my time at Florida State, I got to see a bunch of Florida State-Florida games and a bunch of Florida State-Miami games as well. So, you know, those rivalry games, they always hold such a heavy weight with all the fan bases and all the players, because, you know, it's a lot of kids from the same state. It's a lot of kids that, you know, either they may have played on the same teams in high school, they might have played against each other in high school, and that also translates here to the Egg Bowl in Mississippi. And that was actually last year, that was my first like all SEC football game that I've ever been to. I've seen Florida plenty of times over in Tallahassee, but you know, that was my first all SEC game that I've ever been to, and it truly is an atmosphere like no other. That game was up at Oxford. This will actually be my first trip over to Davis Wade as well. So looking forward to seeing that, seeing the atmosphere, hearing the cowbells when I imagine that they'll be ringing the loudest. So yeah,
Mississippi
really
State turns up the intensity for this Egg Bowl game every single year. And I mentioned the fights. There's always been a fight. I can remember many years ago, about 1990, when the game was still played at Jackson. There was a fight that broke out, and it covered the entire length of the field. There was players during the actual game, and there's been several times where during pregame warm-ups that the teams have gone at it. So that adds to the intensity. We'll see if that will continue tomorrow night on Thanksgiving. Dan Mullen, Hugh Freeze, the rivalry ramped up during those years when both teams were really having good seasons at the same time. So it's always fun. We'll see how it plays out tomorrow, and you'll be live starting when during WLOX Newscast tomorrow?
Probably 4 o'clock. So and throughout the evening, as long as we can until the game starts. Once the game starts, we got to get everything rolling. But yeah, we will be there all afternoon. Yeah.
So after you finish your turkey tomorrow afternoon, be sure to turn on the WLOX News at 4 o'clock and see Blake Brannon and Matt DiGregorio live from Starkville as they will be getting ready for the Egg Bowl, and then I guess post-game coverage later that night, and then on Friday morning.
Probably into the morning. Those games, you know, if it gets crazy, they might last a long time, but yeah, late night and into the morning, but yeah, we will be there for you.
Okay, Blake Brannon, thanks for joining us. I'm Hugh Keeton. We hope you have a great Thanksgiving and enjoy the Egg Bowl.